They sent an ultimatum. We sent a mirror. Admiral Aris Thorne stood on the command deck of the fleet carrier Resilience, his gaze fixed on the volumetric display dominating the chamber. A sphere of crimson light pulsed at its center, representing the star Oakhaven, while a quarantine line of identical warships formed a perfect orbital cage around the system's primary planet. The Varan Ascendancy called their blockade a sanction, a sterile term for a death sentence delivered on a schedule. On the main display, a simple, elegant counter ticked down in stark white numerals, Show 600. 6 hours until the Ascendancy sterilized the colony on Oakhaven 4, unless humanity surrendered its claim to the entire sector. His reflection stared back from the polished deck, plating a ghost layered over the tactical void. Beside him, the fleet-mined Magellan manifested as a column of shimmering blue light, its synthesized voice a calm counterpoint to the tension coiling in the air. Admiral, all 36 ships of the Third Fleet are in position cloaked beyond the system's heliopause. The Varan picket line remains unaware of our arrival. The AI's tone was impossibly serene, a product of pure logic, untroubled by the silent screams of the 20 million civilians held hostage below. Aris felt the low, familiar thrum of the Resilience through the soles of his boots, a steadying presence against the storm. They are confident in their doctrine, Magellan, Aris said, his voice a low murmur that carried across the hushed bridge. An ultimatum is only effective if the target believes you are willing to pay the butcher's bill. The Varan had used this tactic for centuries, present an overwhelming threat issue, a non-negotiable demand, and execute the penalty with religious fervor if defied. They saw it as a tool of cosmic order, a way to prevent costly wars by making the price of resistance absolute. They built their empire on the ashes of the Defiant. His communications officer, Lieutenant Eva Rostova, turned from her console, her expression grim. Sir, the Varan flagship Iron Justice is broadcasting the ultimatum on all civilian channels. They are showing images of our colony of the farms and cities. They want the colonists to know who is responsible for their fate. A subtle scent of ozone from the overworked EW scrubbers tinged the air. The Varan weren't just threatening a government. They were psychologically dismantling a population. Aris clenched his jaw. He would not let fear write this chapter. We will not bargain with extinction. Let them broadcast. Aris commanded, his eyes never leaving the display. Let the entire sector watch. They believe they are demonstrating strength, but they are merely documenting their own cruelty for the record. He turned to Magellan. Begin deployment of the Gossamer squadrons. I want every mirror satellite in place before that timer hits 4 hours. Full emissions blackout until I give the word. The AI's light column pulsed once in acknowledgement. 36 ships, hidden in the dark, began to release their silent, shimmering payloads, the first pieces of a puzzle the Varan had never seen before. The civilian vignette appeared on a secondary screen, a live feed from a shelter on Oakhaven 4. A young girl, no older than 10, was holding a small, crudely carved wooden bird up to a worn-looking man, her father. It can't fly in here, she said, her small voice tinny through the comms pickup. When the skylights come back on, can we let it see the sun? The man pulled her into a hug, his face a mask of forced calm. Soon, little bird, he whispered. The sun will be back soon. Aris felt the weight of that promise settle onto his shoulders. It was a debt he intended to honor. Their doctrine is a hammer. We must be the anvil. Magellan confirmed the Varan fleet's composition and energy posture. Aris ordered, his focus narrowing to the tactical problem. The AI's voice was instantaneous. Analysis complete. The Varan fleet consists of 12 Judicator-class dreadnoughts and 24 Warden-class frigates. They are holding at 90% power shields at maximum weapons batteries charged but inactive. They are postured for orbital bombardment, not fleet engagement. They expected surrender or defiance, not a third option. They had no idea what was waiting for them in the dark. The slight vibration of the deck shifted as the carrier made a micro-correction to its cloaked position. "They're not expecting a fight," Rostova observed. "They're expecting us to break." "Humanity doesn't break, Lieutenant," Eris replied, a hard edge to his voice. "We learn. Magellan, prepare the decoy convoy. Standard freighter signatures, civilian transponders. Time their arrival for the 2-hour mark." His strategy was not to shatter the Varan blockade, but to dismantle the logic that held it together. The Varan ultimatum was a statement of power, a declaration that they were willing to accept any cost so long as someone else paid it. Aris was about to present them with a bill of their own. This is not a battle, it is a reckoning. The Gossamer squadrons, each a swarm of thousands of tiny hyper-reflective satellites, moved like ghosts through the outer system. They were no bigger than a dinner plate designed to be nearly undetectable until activated. On the main display, their deployment paths were traced in faint ethereal blue lines, weaving a vast net around the Varan fleet. Each satellite was a node in a system-wide lattice, a weapon that fired nothing but light. It was a tool of misdirection, of strategic reflection, a way to turn an enemy's strength into a crippling weakness. Aris watched the countdown. 0430. The weight of 20 million lives felt like a physical pressure in the room. He could hear the faint rhythmic pulse of his own heartbeat through the suit's internal sensors. He ran a hand over the cool metal of the command lectern. "Commander Jax, report status of the E-Warfare suites." Commander Ben Jax, his tactical officer, swiveled in his chair. "Sir, all electronic warfare corvettes are slaved to Magellan. We are prepared to initiate the data flood on your command. We can spoof thousands of sensor readings from phantom fleets to false energy spikes. The Varan won't know which way is up." The plan had multiple layers of deception. The Varan saw the universe as a simple equation of force. Eris was about to introduce variables they had never considered. They cannot fight what they cannot see. The first escalation came precisely as Magellan had predicted. The countdown reached 04, and the Varan flagship broadcast a new message. "The Ascendancy offers this final mercy," a booming synthesized voice declared. "Surrender your fleet and your claim. Your colonists will be interned peacefully. Defy us, and their dust will be a lesson to your descendants." It was a classic move, an attempt to turn the knife to make the human command feel the burden of their choice. They were trying to break him. "They are following their script," Aris noted calmly. The console glare reflected in his eyes, turning them into chips of cold fire. "They believe this shows resolve." Magellan's light flickered. "Admiral, their psychological warfare doctrine is well documented. This escalation is intended to provoke an emotional, predictable response, a desperate charge, a fractured negotiation. It is a tool to force an error." The AI's logic was a grounding force, a reminder that this was a chess match, not a brawl. The Varan were playing their pieces exactly as expected. "Our response will not be in their playbook." The next hour passed in near silence, the only sounds the soft hum of the life support and the quiet clicks of consoles. The gossamer lattice was now in place, a dormant web of mirrors spanning millions of kilometers. The decoy convoy of freighter signatures was accelerating toward the system, their transponders squawking messages of panic and pleas for aid. They were the bait, a carefully constructed piece of theater designed to draw the Varan's attention. The civilian shelter feed flickered again. The little girl was asleep, the wooden bird clutched in her hand. Her father was watching a public news feed on a small tablet, his face etched with a desperate hope. He was looking for a sign, any sign that they had not been abandoned. Aris felt a surge of cold resolve. He was not just fighting for a sector or a strategic asset. He was fighting for that little girl's sunrise. "We hold the line for the hopeful." The countdown hit 0200. As if on cue, the decoy convoy breached the system's edge, their simulated engine flares blooming on Varan sensors. "Admiral, the Varan have detected the convoy," Rostova reported, her voice tight. "They are hailing them, demanding they turn back." On the main display, the Varan ships shifted their orientation slightly, their primary weapon ports turning to face the inbound freighters. They were taking the bait perfectly. "Let them posture," Aris said. "They need to believe we are desperate. Magellan, activate Phase 1 of the data flood. Fill their sensor screens with ghosts." Jax's hands flew across his console. In an instant, the Varan tactical network was inundated with false signals. Phantom warship signatures appeared at random vectors, energy readings spiked and vanished, and communication channels filled with static and echoes of their own transmissions. "Their senses are now our weapons." The Varan fleet reacted with confusion. Their perfect blockade formation wavered as individual ships turned to investigate the phantom threats. Their communications became a cacophony of conflicting reports and frantic queries. They were staring into a hall of mirrors, unable to trust what they were seeing. The display showed their disciplined lines breaking into a disordered scramble. It was the first crack in their monolithic certainty. "They are losing situational awareness," Jax confirmed, a grim smile touching his lips. "Their command is demanding clarity, but their sensors are lying to them." The Varan doctrine was built on a foundation of perfect information and overwhelming force. Aris had taken away the first pillar. Soon he would address the second. "A blind enemy is a predictable enemy. Admiral..." Magellan interjected, its calm tone cutting through the rising tension. "My analysis suggests the Varan commander Prelate Kael will interpret this as a prelude to a conventional assault. He will default to his doctrine, consolidate his forces, ignore the noise, and focus on the primary threat, the planet." The AI's prediction was chillingly logical. Kael would assume the chaos was a screen for a brute force attack. He would double down on his ultimatum. "He's going to threaten to accelerate the bombardment," Aris finished, his eyes locked on the timer. 0130. The Varan commander was cornered not by force but by uncertainty, and a cornered animal was always the most dangerous. "They will mistake mercy for weakness." As predicted, the Iron Justice broadcast again, its voice sharper, laced with metallic anger. "Humanity, your pathetic deceptions have sealed your fate. The countdown is accelerated. You have 30 minutes. Surrender now or we begin the cleansing." The timer on the main screen dissolved and was replaced by a new one, 0:30. The crimson sphere of Oakhaven seemed to pulse with a more menacing light. The air on the bridge grew heavy, thick with unspoken fear. Rostova looked at Aris, her face pale. "Sir, 30 minutes. Aris did not flinch. "He has just made his final mistake, Lieutenant. He has abandoned his own schedule, his own doctrine. He is reacting to us now." He turned to the shimmering column of light. "Magellan, the board is set. Activate the lattice. Slave every mirror to the Varan weapon emplacements. Let's show them what their certainty looks like up close." "It is time to settle the account." The command went out. Across millions of kilometers of empty space, thousands of tiny satellites awoke. Their mirrored surfaces no bigger than a shield, tilted in perfect synchrony, each one catching the faint light of the distant star. They were not weapons. They were reflectors, designed for one purpose, to redirect energy. And the Varan fleet, with its weapons charging for orbital bombardment, was about to provide all the energy they needed. On the main display, the Varan dreadnoughts began to glow as their primary cannons powered up. Heat signatures flared across their hulls, a visible declaration of their intent. They were preparing to fire on the planet, to make good on their threat. The console in front of Aris showed the energy buildup, a rising tide of destructive power. The faint hum of the Resilience's own systems seemed to hold its breath. Their own power will be their undoing. A crewman in the pit watched his screen, his knuckles white. He was monitoring the atmospheric ion count over Oakhaven 4's largest city. "No change, sir," he reported, his voice strained. "They're still holding." He had family down there, a younger sister who had just enrolled in the planetary university. For him, this was not an abstract strategic game. It was a countdown to the end of his world. Aris keyed his comms. "Steady, son. We are the shield." The words were for the crewman, but also for himself. The responsibility was a crushing weight, but it was a weight he had trained his entire life to bear. This was the moment where doctrine met reality, where philosophy was tested by fire. "We are the guardians of the dawn." The countdown hit 00:05:00. The Varan dreadnought's energy signatures peaked. They were committed. Their gun ports glowed with incandescent fury, ready to unleash hell on the helpless world below. The Varan commander, Prelate Kael, had made his choice. He had chosen to be a butcher. Now Aris would make his. "Jax," Aris said, his voice ringing with absolute authority. "Bring up the Prelate's flagship on the main screen. I want him to have a front-row seat." The image of the Iron Justice resolved a brutalist wedge of gray metal bristling with weapons. "Magellan, open a direct channel. No encryption. Let the whole system hear it. The truth requires no shield." The channel opened with a crackle. "Prelate Kael," Aris's voice boomed across the Varan bridge, calm and clear. "This is Admiral Aris Thorn of the Terran Third Fleet. You are about to violate interstellar law and commit an act of mass murder. I am offering you one final chance to stand down." There was a moment of stunned silence from the Varan ship. They hadn't even known the Third Fleet was there. The prelate's voice, when it came, was laced with contempt. "Admiral Thorn, your tricks are meaningless. Your fleet is a ghost. Your colonists will pay the price for your arrogance. Fire." The order was given. The Varan fleet unleashed its power. 12 beams of pure energy, enough to boil oceans and crack continents, lanced out from the dreadnoughts aimed at the hard fought of Oakhaven 4. But they never reached their target. "We do not answer threats, we return them." In the microsecond that the beams fired, the gossamer lattice flared into life. Each of the thousands of mirrors precisely angled by Magellan's calculations caught a fraction of the incoming energy. The beams of death intended for the planet were captured, bent, and refocused. The empty space between the Varan ships and the planet became a lens, a massive system-sized optical circuit. The Varan did not even have time to register the failure. Their own energy, multiplied and concentrated, was redirected back at them. The 12 beams converged on a single point, the unshielded bridge of the Iron Justice. For a brilliant, silent instant, the Varan flagship was illuminated not by the light of the star, but by the focused fury of its own weapons. Then the bridge of the dreadnought simply vanished in a flash of white-hot plasma. The ledger is now balanced. The remaining Varan ships, their command structure vaporized. Their senses, still flooded with phantom data, fell into chaos. Their bombardment had failed. Their flagship was crippled. And a ghost fleet they couldn't see had just turned their ultimate weapon against them. The perfect, unshakable Varan doctrine had shattered in a single silent instant of reflected light. The cost was minimal for the Third Fleet. A few of the mirror satellites were overloaded by the energy surge, vaporizing into glittering dust. The heat dissipation from the E-warfare corvettes caused minor reparable burns on their outer hulls. It was a small price to pay for 20 million lives. On the bridge of the Resilience, a collective breath was released. The tension that had held them in its grip for hours finally broke. Rostova looked at Aris, her eyes wide with awe. "Sir, they learned a lesson, Lieutenant," Aris said, his voice quiet but firm. "The price of an ultimatum is that you must be willing to live with the consequences yourself. The countdown clock was gone, replaced by the chaotic energy signatures of a fleet in full retreat. This fleet teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers, never by collars. Magellan! Aris ordered, his gaze sweeping over the tactical display. The Varan ships were scattering their disciplined formation, completely gone. Target their engine rooms, not with weapons, with mirrors. Redirect their own drive plasma back at their thrusters. Disable them. I want them stranded here, listening to the silence, thinking about their choices. They came to issue a sentence. They will stay to hear one. The gossamer lattice, still active, reoriented. It was a more delicate operation now, not a single massive reflection, but thousands of tiny, precise ones. As the Varan frigates and dreadnoughts tried to flee their own engine wash, was caught by the mirrors and expertly redirected into their exhaust nozzles. One by one, Varan ships sputtered and died, their engines slagged from the inside out by their own escape attempt. They were left adrift, powerless in the system they had intended to conquer. They were not destroyed, but they were defeated. Not by a bigger gun, but by a better idea. The ultimate expression of force had been undone by the elegant application of logic. This was the human way of war, to dismantle an enemy's will to fight, not just their ability to do so. A reckoning can be a quiet thing. The second phase of the plan began. With the Varan fleet neutralized, the 36 ships of the Third Fleet finally dropped their cloaks. They appeared on the Varan's now functional but useless sensors in a perfect ring surrounding the disabled fleet, their forms sleek and formidable against the black of space. They did not power up weapons. They simply existed, a silent, unassailable presence. "Open a channel to all remaining Varan ships," Aris commanded. "Magellan, I want you to deliver the message." He had made his point with fire. Now he would make it with reason. The AI's voice, serene and logical, broadcast to the crippled fleet. "Varan Ascendancy, you are defeated. Your fleet is disabled. Your ultimatum has been rendered void. You are now under the protection of the Terran Third Fleet. Medical and engineering assistance will be provided to ensure the survival of your crews. Acknowledge. We will teach them the meaning of mercy." The response from the Varan was a wave of confusion and disbelief. Their doctrine had no precedent for this. They understood destruction. They understood surrender. They did not understand an enemy who defeated them without killing them, who offered aid in the immediate aftermath of a battle they had started. The heat shimmer from the Resilience's forward emitters was the only sign of the power it held in reserve. On the civilian feed from Oakhaven 4, the news had broken. The image of the crippled Varan fleet surrounded by the powerful Terran ships filled the screen. The man who had been comforting his daughter was now standing, tears streaming down his face. The little girl was awake now, pointing at the screen. "The skylights are back," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "Did they bring the sun back?" Her father scooped her up, burying his face in her hair. "Yes, little bird," he sobbed. "They brought the sun back." They sought to make an example. Instead, they became one. Aris watched the scene, the knot in his chest finally loosening. This was the reason they fought. Not for territory, not for pride, but for the simple, profound right of a child to see the sunrise. The cost of victory was more than just a few damaged satellites. It was the emotional toll on every soul in the fleet, the constant grinding weight of holding the line. "Admiral," Jack said, his voice softer now, "we have a problem. One of the Varan dreadnoughts. It's not powering down. It's diverting all remaining energy to its weapons. It's a splinter faction, sir. The ship's captain is broadcasting. He's calling Prelate Kyle a heretic for failing. He says the only true path is destruction." The Varan's rigid ideology was turning on itself. Oh, a new ultimatum appeared on the main screen, this one originating from the rogue dreadnought, the inevitable judgment. It was aimed not at Oakhaven, but at the other disabled Varen ships. "Embrace the final truth," the captain's voice screamed, distorted with fanaticism. "Redemption is only found in annihilation. All ships will self-destruct to purify this failure, or I will cleanse you myself." Their doctrine was always a death cult. Eris stared at the screen. The Varen captain was forcing a new horrific choice upon his own people. He was turning their failed ultimatum inward, a snake eating its own tail. The human fleet was now in the position of protecting a defeated enemy from itself. The moral calculus of the situation had become infinitely more complex. The conflict triangle human morality AI calculus, Varen doctrine, had just been twisted into a knot. "Magellan, what is the calculus on this?" Aris asked, his mind racing. "The rogue dreadnought. Inevitable judgment is a severe threat," the AI replied instantly. "Its captain, Sub-Prelate Malik, is a known zealot. The probability of him firing on the other Varen ships is 98.7%. The probability of those ships complying with his self-destruct order is less than 5%. He is attempting to martyr his entire fleet to uphold his interpretation of the doctrine. We must anchor them against their own storm," Rostova's console chirped. "Sir, we are receiving panicked hails from the other Varen ships. They are asking for our help. They are trapped between Malik's guns and our fleet." The irony was staggering. The architects of the ultimatum were now begging for salvation from the very people they had condemned. The human moral line was clear. They could not stand by and watch a massacre even of an enemy fleet. But the tactical situation was perilous. Intervening directly would mean firing on a Varen ship, potentially reigniting the conflict and giving the Ascendancy a pretext for a full-scale war. Not intervening meant allowing a zealot to slaughter his own people, a moral stain they could not accept. "Jax, what are our options?" Aris demanded. "We can't get a ship between Malik and his targets in time." Jax reported, his face grim. "Our mirror lattice is still oriented for disabling engines, not blocking a point-blank ship-to-ship barrage. Realigning it would take minutes we don't have." The console's glare felt hotter, more accusatory. "He's got them in a kill box. Their brutality has become their prison." Eris felt the deck vibrate as the Resilience held its position, a silent witness. This was the true test. It was easy to be merciful to a defeated foe. It was much harder to be wise when that foe was tearing itself apart, threatening to drag everyone down with it. He needed a third option, something that wasn't on the tactical menu. He needed a way to break the logic of the Zealot's ultimatum. "He wants to be a martyr, Magellan," Aris thought aloud, his voice low. "He wants a glorious, fiery end that proves his faith. We can't give that to him. We can't destroy him, and we can't let him destroy others." The AI's light column seemed to brighten. "Martyrdom requires an audience, Admiral. It is a broadcast performance. Sub-Prelate Malik is not just threatening his fellow Varen. He is performing for his entire civilization. He is attempting to become a legend." And in that instant, Aris saw the path. It was not a military solution. It was a psychological one. "We will not fight his war. We will change the channel." "Rostova, cut off his broadcast," Aris commanded. "Every frequency. I want a total communications blackout around that dreadnought. He can scream his orders into the void, but no one is going to hear them. Jax, get our E-warfare corvettes to project a false sensory bubble around him. Inside that bubble, make him see whatever he wants to see." "Sir," Jax asked, confused. "Make him believe his ultimatum is working." Aris clarified, his eyes alight with a fierce intelligence. "Feed him false sensor data showing the other Varen ships are beginning their self-destruct sequences. Let him see their energy signatures climb, their containment fields fail. Give him the glorious, honorable death of his fleet that he craves. Let him win. It is time to reflect his own madness back at him." The plan was audacious, a piece of strategic judo on a scale no one had ever attempted. They would not stop the Zealot with force. They would grant his wish in a world of pure illusion, while in the real world, they would save the very people he sought to destroy. The bridge crew stared at him, a mixture of shock and dawning understanding on their faces. "Magellan, can we do it?" Aris asked. The processing power required would be immense but achievable. The AI confirmed. "We can create a bespoke reality for the inevitable judgment, isolating it from real-time data. The Varan ships he is targeting will be rendered invisible to his sensors, replaced by our fabricated duplicates." The AI's calm voice made the impossible sound merely difficult. "Their faith is blind. We will give it eyes." "Do it," Aris ordered. "And while Malik is watching his own private apocalypse, I want a clear channel to the other Varan commanders. Patch me through personally." The scent of ozone returned as the E-warfare ships spooled up their projectors, focusing immense power, not into a data flood, but into a single perfectly crafted lie. The bridge of the inevitable judgment was now encased in a phantom world. On their screens, they saw the other Varan dreadnoughts and frigates begin to glow their hulls, venting plasma as their cores went critical. Sub-Prelate Malik stood on his bridge, a fanatic's smile spreading across his face. He was witnessing the glorious, purifying fire he had demanded. He had become the catalyst for his fleet's honorable end. But in reality, his ship was firing on empty space. His sensors were showing him ghosts, and the fleet he thought was dying was listening to the voice of his enemy. "Truth is the only weapon that matters. Varan commanders." Aris's voice was calm and steady, broadcast to the 23 ships holding their breath in the dark. Sub-Prelate Malik is contained. He is witnessing a fiction of his own making. He can no longer see you or harm you. You are safe. The hull of the Resilience hummed with the immense energy being directed into the illusion. He continued, "Your doctrine of the ultimatum has led you to this moment, a choice between suicide and slaughter dictated by one of your own. This is the end point of your philosophy. It consumes itself." He let the words hang in the silence. He was not gloating. He was teaching. He was holding up a mirror to their entire civilization. "I am offering you a third choice," Aris said. "Not surrender, not destruction. A chance to write a different ending. Power down your remaining systems. Accept our medical and engineering teams. Help us secure your zealot. And we will begin a dialogue not as conqueror and conquered, but as equals who have stepped back from the brink. We do not offer terms, we open doors." There was a long silence. On the main display, the inevitable judgment continued to fire its weapons at phantom targets, its captain lost in his triumphant delusion. The other Varan ships remained dark and silent. They were processing, debating their entire worldview shaken to its core. They had been prepared to die for their ascendancy, but they had never been prepared for an enemy to save them from it. Then one by one, their running lights began to blink out. Power signatures faded. They were accepting his offer. They were choosing the third door. It was not a surrender. It was an awakening. A quiet revolution was taking place in the heart of a crippled fleet born from an act of unexpected mercy. A single act of grace can disarm an empire. The crisis was over, but the work was just beginning. Medical shuttles, small and unarmed, began to move from the human ships toward the disabled Varan vessels. Engineers prepared to help stabilize their failing life support. There was no cheering on the bridge of the Resilience, only a profound sense of gravity. They had won, but the nature of that victory was fragile, something that had to be nurtured, not just celebrated. Aris watched the shuttles, their lights small beacons of hope in the darkness. He had flipped the Varan's strategy, exposed the cost of their doctrine, and saved 20 million lives without losing a single one of his own. But he had also taken on a new immense responsibility to guide a defeated and disillusioned enemy toward a new understanding. The hardest battles are fought after the guns fall silent. Magellan maintained the illusion around the inevitable judgment, Aris ordered. Keep Malik in his glorious final moment until we can board his ship and take him into custody. I want him to be the only casualty of his own war and only of his own sanity." The AI pulsed its acknowledgement. The zealot would remain the star of his own show, a play with an audience of one until the curtain finally fell. He looked out at the starfield, at the silent ships of two fleets mingling not in combat, but in recovery. The ultimatum was broken. The blockade was lifted. The sun was rising on Oakhaven 4, not in a wave of fire but in the gentle light of a new day. He had held the line and in doing so had drawn a new one, a line not between enemies but between yesterday and tomorrow. The future is a promise we make to the present. The bridge was still quiet, the crew moving with a hushed efficiency, securing the peace they had so carefully won. The low thrum of the carrier felt different now, not a vibration of tension, but the steady heartbeat of a guardian. A message appeared on Aris's private console. It was from the planetary governor of Oakhaven 4. It contained no words, only a single image, a city square filled with people looking up at the sky, their faces streaked with tears of relief. In the foreground, a little girl was holding a wooden bird up to the morning sun. He allowed himself a small, weary smile. The ledger was balanced, the lesson taught. Now came the long, slow work of making sure it was remembered. The universe was wide and filled with doctrines written in fire, but today, in this small, quiet corner of the galaxy, a new precedent had been set. They sent an ultimatum. We gave them a future. The logistics of mercy were proving to be as complex as the mathematics of war. On the main volumetric display, dozens of friendly transport signatures, blue arrows of hope, moved with deliberate slowness toward the disabled Varan ships now marked in a neutral amber. Each shuttle carried medics, engineers, and trauma counselors. They were an unarmed invasion of compassion, a tactical deployment of empathy that was in its own way as audacious as the mirror lattice itself. The low thrum of the Resilience was now punctuated by the soft hiss of airlocks cycling and the distant clang of supply pallets being loaded. "The first teams are making contact, Admiral," Lieutenant Rostova reported, her voice a mixture of relief and apprehension. "The Varan ship Steadfast Vow has accepted medical supplies. Their captain sends his gratitude." The word sounded foreign in this context, a strange artifact from a future that hadn't existed an hour ago. Aris nodded, the subtle tension in his shoulders easing by a fraction. The first domino had fallen peacefully. "We have replaced their battlefield with a bridge." "Magellan," Aris said, turning to the calm column of light. "What is the energy expenditure for maintaining the illusion around the inevitable judgment?" "Significant, Admiral." The AI responded without inflection. "We are dedicating 34% of the fleet's total projector power to sustain a single coherent false reality for Sub-Prelate Malik. It is a drain on our reserves, but tactically sustainable for another 48 hours. The cost of victory was not just in material, but in the sustained effort of keeping a single man's hatred confined to his own skull." The air on the bridge carried the faint, sharp scent of stressed coolant systems working overtime. "This is the price of a bloodless peace." A new vignette appeared on a side monitor, this one from the helmet cam of a human medic boarding the Varan frigate Warden's Eye. The ship's internal lighting was dim emergency power only. Varan crew members, tall and severe in their gray uniforms, lined the corridor. Their faces were masks of shock and suspicion, their doctrine shattered, leaving nothing but uncertainty in its wake. The medic, a young woman with a calm voice, stopped before a wounded Varan officer, his arm seared by a plasma conduit rupture. "Permission to treat your wound, sir?" she asked, holding up a medical scanner. The Varan officer stared at her outstretched hand, then at his own, and for a long moment did nothing. Then slowly he nodded. "The first word in healing is trust. We need to secure Malik," Commander Jack stated. his gaze fixed on the red icon of the inevitable judgment. The longer he's in command of that ship, the greater the risk, illusion or not. He could still decide to overload his reactor. He won't, Aris countered. His doctrine demands a victory, even a fabricated one. Overloading the reactor is an act of despair, not triumph. He's a prisoner of his own narrative. He keyed his command channel. Prepare a strike team. No heavy weapons. I want them equipped with neural stunners and breaching charges only. Their mission is to secure the bridge and take Malik alive. He will stand trial not as a warrior, but as the author of a crime that never happened. He will be judged by the lives he failed to take. The strike team's shuttle, the Quiet Resolve, detached from the Resilience and moved silently toward the rogue dreadnought. It was a single dark shape against the vastness of space, a scalpel moving to excise a tumor. On the bridge, they watched the team's progress on a dedicated feed. The tension which had subsided began to coil again. The illusion around Malek was a masterpiece of deception, but it was still a fragile thing. A single stray sensor ping, a flicker in the projection, could bring the Zealot's madness crashing back into the real world. The team boarded the inevitable judgment. Through an emergency airlock meeting, no resistance. The ship's corridors were eerily quiet. Most of the crew, disconnected from their fanatical leader, had already gathered in the mess halls, awaiting instructions, their will to fight extinguished. The human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, their boots making soft metallic sounds on the deck plating. The glare from their helmet lights cut through the gloom. They came to break a world. Now they walk it in shadow. The strike team reached the bridge blast doors. "We're in position," the team leader whispered over the comm. "Ready to breach on your mark." "Hold," Aris commanded. He looked to the AI. "Magellan, on my mark, drop the illusion. All of it. I want Malik to see reality for 1 second before they take him." It was a cruel mercy, but a necessary one. The Zealot needed to understand his failure before judgment could begin. "Mark," Aris said, his voice cold and clear. On the bridge of the inevitable judgment, Sub-Prelate Malik was roaring in triumph. On his view screen, the last of the fabricated Varan ships had just exploded in a glorious, silent fireball. He had purified his fleet. He had upheld the doctrine. He was a hero. And then his screen flickered. The fireballs vanished. The stars snapped back into their proper places. His sensors, suddenly clear, showed him the 23 Varan ships of his fleet intact, disabled, and accepting aid from human shuttles. He saw the Terran Third Fleet holding a perfect silent vigil. He saw the truth. The truth is the cruelest mirror of all. His roar of triumph died in his throat, replaced by a strangled gasp of disbelief. The universe had betrayed him. His faith, his victory, it was all a lie. In that moment of shattering cognitive dissonance, the blast doors behind him exploded inward. The human strike team flooded the bridge, their forms silhouetted against the flash. Malik spun around his face, a canvas of pure, uncomprehending rage. He reached for his sidearm, but it was too late. A blue pulse of energy from a neural stunner caught him in the chest. He collapsed, his last act, not one of glorious defiance, but of pathetic, futile surprise. Their greatest zealot fell without a sound. With Malik secured, the final piece of the Varan threat was removed. But a new, more complex challenge began to unfold. Aris now had an entire enemy fleet in his custody, 23 ships and nearly 50,000 crew members. They were not prisoners of war, not technically. No war had been declared. They were simply here. A stranded armada, their ideology in tatters, their future an unwritten page. "Admiral, what are your orders regarding the Varan fleet?" Jax asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. "We can't hold them here forever. It's a logistical nightmare." "We won't hold them as prisoners, Commander," Aris said, his eyes sweeping across the amber icons. "We will hold them as evidence." He brought up the main display, zooming out to show the entire Oakhaven system. This system is no longer a potential battlefield. It is now a classroom, and the Varen fleet is the primary lesson. The crew of the bridge exchanged puzzled glances. We will turn their weapons into monuments for generations. Aris explained, his voice resonating with a new kind of authority. The Varen ascendancy has used the ultimatum as a tool of terror. They broadcast their threats, but they bury the consequences. The galaxy sees the surrender or the ash, but never the choice, never the human cost. That changes today. He continued, Magellan, I want you to establish a permanent public broadcast from this system. Triangulate it with every major interstellar news feed. We are going to broadcast the truth 24 hours a day. We will show the Varen fleet floating peacefully. We will air the recordings of their initial ultimatum. We will share the helmet cam footage of our medics treating their wounded. We will interview the Varen crews once they are willing to speak. This is not propaganda. It is a public ledger. The sheer scale of his idea settled over the bridge. He was not just trying to win a battle. He was trying to dismantle a culture of violence piece by piece with unrelenting transparency. He was turning the entire Oakhaven system into a living museum exhibit titled The Failure of Force. The Varen had wanted to make an example of Oakhaven. Aris would make an example of their failure instead. The heat from a nearby console felt like a tiny star, a beacon of the new reality he was forging. Sir, the Ascendancy will see this as an act of profound humiliation, Rostova warned. Their high command could react unpredictably. They might send another fleet, one that isn't postured for bombardment. Let them, Aris replied calmly. But this time they will not be coming for a helpless colony. They will be coming for the truth. And the entire galaxy will be watching. They cannot bombard an idea. Weeks turned into a month. The Oakhaven broadcast, as it came to be known, was a sensation. It was the most watched feed in the sector. Viewers saw Varen engineers working alongside human counterparts to repair their own ships. They heard Varen officers in halting, candid interviews describing the collapse of their most deeply held beliefs. They saw the colonists of Oakhaven 4 not as victims, but as hosts, their planetary government facilitating the flow of information. The cost was immense. The Third Fleet's supply lines were stretched thin, and the crew was exhausted from the constant, delicate work of being both guardians and wardens. The Varen Ascendancy was silent. Their empire, built on the perception of unshakable resolve, was paralyzed. To attack the Third Fleet would be to attack the keepers of their own humbled people, an act of monstrous cruelty that would shatter their reputation forever. To abandon their fleet would be a sign of unforgivable weakness. Aris had not trapped them in a kill box. He had trapped them in a moral paradox. Their silence is the sound of their doctrine breaking. Finally, a single ship appeared at the edge of the Oakhaven system. It was not a warship. It was a diplomatic courier, its hull painted a stark ceremonial white. It broadcast a simple message: the Varen Ascendancy requests a parley with Admiral Aris Thorn. They blinked. Jax murmured, a slow smile spreading across his face. They did more than that, Commander, Aris said. They have agreed to learn. They came to talk because they could no longer afford to fight. The negotiation took place on the Resilience in a formal conference room. The Varen delegation was led by an ancient, stone-faced diplomat named Xylan. He carried the weight of a failing empire on his shoulders. Aris met him not in his dress uniform, but in a simple duty jumpsuit flanked only by Rostova and the shimmering, silent form of Magellan. Admiral, Xylan began, his voice a dry rasp. You have made your point. We are here to discuss the return of our fleet and our people. They are not and have never been my prisoners, Aris stated plainly. They are free to leave the moment their ships are space-worthy. We are here to discuss the doctrine that brought them here. The suit's internal sensors registered Eris's heartbeat slow and steady as a drum. He would not be rushed. He would not settle for a simple truce. He did not come to negotiate a peace. He came to define it. The sanction doctrine is an internal matter of ascendancy policy, Xylan said stiffly. Magellan, Aris said, gesturing to the AI. A holographic display bloomed over the table. It showed a map of the galaxy dotted with red markers. The AI has compiled a public ledger. Each marker represents a world or an outpost that has been subjected to your sanction doctrine over the last 2 centuries. 67 ultimatums issued. 67 ultimatums that resulted in either total capitulation or total annihilation until Oakhaven. The diplomat stared at the display at the stark, bloody history of his own people laid bare by cold, hard data. Your point, he asked, his composure cracking slightly. My point, Aris said, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a quiet intensity, is that your internal policy has left a scar across this entire arm of the galaxy. It is a policy of terror, and its time is over. The price for the return of your fleet's honor is the public permanent abolition of that doctrine. You will sign it into interstellar law here today, and the Oakhaven broadcast will be its witness. Their legacy of fear would end here. Xylan was silent for a full minute. He was a creature of the old way, a believer in power and leverage. But he had no leverage here. Eris had taken all his pieces. The only thing the Varen had left to bargain with was their future. He looked at the unblinking data on the screen, at the calm, resolute human admiral, and at the silent AI that had undone an empire with mathematics. The Ascendancy agrees, Xylan said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. We will sign your accord. The institutional consequence was formalized in a document transmitted across the galaxy, the Oakhaven Accords. On the public interstellar ledger, the Varen Ascendancy's legal framework was amended. The ultimatum sanction doctrine was officially and permanently outlawed, its use grounds for immediate censure and interstellar intervention. Their greatest weapon was defeated by a single signature. The departure of the Varen fleet was a strange, subdued affair. One by one, their ships, now fully repaired, powered up their main drives. There were no grand speeches, no formal ceremonies. But as the first Varen dreadnought prepared to enter hyperspace, its captain opened a fleet-wide channel, his voice thick with an emotion his people rarely displayed. To the Terran Third Fleet, he said, you taught us that the strength of a wall is not in its height, but in the gate it holds open. We have learned. The Varen ships vanished in flashes of blue-white light, leaving the Oakhaven system in peace for the first time in months. The human crews on the bridges of the Third Fleet watched them go, a quiet sense of profound, weary accomplishment settling over them. They hadn't just won a battle. They had changed a future. The low vibration of the deck felt like a sigh of relief from the ship itself. Eris stood on the command deck, watching the last of the hyperspace signatures fade from the volumetric display. The space around Oakhaven was clean again, empty and quiet. The mirror satellites, their duty done, were being collected into retrieval bays, their brilliant surfaces now dull and cool. The lights of the blockade, the amber alerts, the crimson warnings, all of it was gone. The bridge was bathed in the simple, gentle starlight of a system at peace. The air, once thick with ozone and tension, now smelled clean, recycled, and calm. The faint rhythmic ticking of a cooling injector was the only sound for a long moment. He had held the line and shown them a better way. Strength, he mused, was never about the power to destroy. That was a simple, brutal calculus. True strength was the patience to teach, the courage to show mercy, and the wisdom to know that the only victories that last are the ones where everyone gets to go home. The ledger was finally truly balanced, not with blood, but with understanding. They learned that a mirror shows you not what you are, but what you could become.